All right, guys, so today I want to talk about being specific in our writing, right? So have you ever gotten feedback on your papers that say things like, be specific, be clear, or what? Right? All of this feedback generally comes down to you being just way too vague, okay? So I'm going to talk about a few ways that we can avoid vagueness and be more specific in our writing, okay? So first one is use precise words, and this one's pretty simple, okay? One reason that your writing may be too vague is because you're using vague words, all right? So a word like stuff or thing might mean in your head something very specific and meaningful, but to your reader, it means nothing. Or they might interpret it to mean something totally different from what you're talking about. Okay, so for example, let's look at the word good. Okay, here's the dictionary definition of the word good. All right, just follow along with me in your paper as I scroll through this. That's a lot. That's all the meanings of the word good. That's a pretty simple word, and y'all throw it around, maybe 20 times an essay. Okay? Um, Good is the perfect example of a vague word. If you're using words like that have a lot of different meanings and are just really overly general, then your writing is going to be less clear and more vague. Okay, so you want to avoid words like that, right? Now, let's talk about another way to avoid vagueness. Give concrete examples to support and explain your point. I think you've heard me talk about this many times before, but it's worth saying again. All right, so if you make a claim in your essay, any type of essay you're writing, doesn't matter if it's a response literature essay for English class or an informative essay for social studies or whatever, okay, you need to be giving examples to support your claims, okay? So you need to make a claim, give evidence, and explain how and why that evidence supports your claim. Evidence does not always stand alone as being self-explanatory, okay? I know you've heard me say it before, but assume that the person reading your essay is an idiot, okay? And generally always assume your reader can't read your mind, okay? All right, so a few examples. We're looking at a response literature essay, okay? Might make a claim like Langston Hughes' poem, I Too, has the theme of celebration of race. That's your claim, that you see this theme in this poem, okay? Then you give me some evidence, which if you're doing response literature should generally be a quote from the work of writing itself. All right, so in this poem, Hughes writes, they'll see how beautiful I am, all right? Then we need our explanation. I need you to explain how this comes back to your claim, right? This quote shows that Hughes celebrates his identity as an African American as a beautiful person. Okay? So very simple example, but you'll notice it follows our whole quote sandwich we always talk about, and this is the general pattern all of your writing should follow. So let's look at an example in persuasive writing. Claim. High schools should have a later start time. Evidence. For example, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine recommends that teenagers aged 13 to 18 years should sleep for 8 to 10 hours per day. All right, now I need to explain how that evidence relates back to school start time. With 93% of high schools starting before 8:30 a.m., students struggle to get the recommended hours of sleep and make it to school on time. Okay, so that's way number 2 to avoid overly vague examples. Okay, make sure you're giving a concrete example, a quote, a statistic, a piece of evidence from a study. Okay, if it's in social studies, you're giving some kind of historical fact. Okay, and then you're explaining how that evidence relates back to your claim. All right, last one, and this is probably the one we're guiltiest of, avoid fuzzy thinking. Okay, fuzzy thinking is what I call it when your statements are not accurate or logical. Here are some ways that we tend to stray into fuzzy thinking. Half-truths. So here's an example. Building a dam would help animals by giving them new habitats. True. But you're leaving out that dams would also destroy the existing habitats of the animals. Okay? Exaggerations. Next, the school board is going to force us to clean the highway. Probably not true. Exaggerations make you sound unrealistic. Right? All or nothing statements. If the school bans fundraisers, we'll never have new uniforms. Most people aren't going to believe those are the only two options. So when you make an all or nothing statement, you kind of lose your credibility. Now, a lot of times, The examples I gave were all kind of ones you would see in persuasive essays, but a lot of times I see y'all do this in response literature essays as well. And when you do this, I think you're just using them to fill up space. So you don't have anything of substance to say, so you just kind of stick in something that you think sounds good. Okay? So for example, Langston Hughes is the greatest writer of the past century. Maybe your essay is arguing that he is the greatest writer of the past century. Certainly something you could argue. But if it's not the basis of your essay and you're not going to back up that claim, then you're just making a general all or nothing statement to fill up space, right? It makes you sound like you probably don't know what you're actually talking about, okay? Everyone in the Harlem Renaissance dealt with searching for their roots. Again, this is the kind of placeholder statement I'll see in like introductions a lot, or you stick it as like a concluding sentence because you don't know what to say. That is another one of those exaggerations or half truths or all or nothing statements where probably not really true and probably doesn't really need to be said. Okay, the Harlem Renaissance was the most important era of American history. Again, you could, unless you're basing an argument around that, it's just something that you're sticking in to fill up space. All right, so you really want to avoid doing statements like that. I'd rather you had much shorter essays where everything you said was actually of substance and contributing to your argument than ones where you stuck in a bunch of like flowery statements because you think I'm not going to be able to tell that you're just trying to fill up space. I can tell. Don't do it. Okay? All right, we're going to keep talking over the next couple weeks. We're going to have some more videos about some of the things we can tune up in our writing, and we'll be doing some practice with this.